those individual conversations need to be about connection, empathy, understanding, and creating a relationship so that when they're in the larger classroom environment with all the other kids, that relationship can be foundational to really inviting their cooperation and collaboration with you.
Many of us, Eva, you and I both have experienced this setting boundaries. So you're a teacher in the classroom. So how can we strike the balance between giving our students independence and setting necessary boundaries for their well-being and safety, and for us to be able to teach everyone the curriculum that we do have?
There's an activity that I really like in the positive discipline in the classroom curriculum to help teachers create expectations together with kids. And my experience has always been that when kids walk in the door, the rules or guidelines are on the wall already. Here's what you're expected to do when you walk in the door. And what we know from a lot of research is that human beings have more buy-in when they have a contribution to the process. And so rather than having kids walk in the door and say, this is what you got to do, I think it's really helpful to say, okay, here are some things that we need to be able to accomplish as a class. I'm expected to teach you, and you need to learn these things so that you have skills that you can use at the next level. How could we make this work together? And maybe the teacher has some possible guidelines written down and saying, here are some things I was thinking of. I wonder if there's anything else that you would add to that, and just kind of get the kids' input, because they might be thinking things that you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's put that on the list. And then let's talk specifics. So when we put on the board, students will treat each other with respect. What does that mean? And so this activity, it's called the best, I can't remember exactly. It's about creating the best school year ever, best classroom experience ever. But what we do is we say, okay, what does that look like? What does that sound like? So if we're going to treat each other with respect, what does that look like? What does that sound like? And maybe we assign a small group to brainstorm around that and write down some ideas. And maybe another expectation is that we show good listening skills. What are good listening skills? Whether the teacher is talking or another student is presenting, what do we agree to do? What does that look like? What does it sound like? And so as we talk about those specifics, looks like, sounds like, for these different guidelines, it may take a few class periods to really iron all that out. But once it's done, when the kids have contributed to that process, they have a whole lot more buy-in, and we can even have them sign the poster that's up on the wall that kind of spells out what they've agreed to, so that we can say, okay, this is our agreement. And what that does is it gives us an opportunity as teachers to say, when a child isn't following the agreement, we can point to the agreement and say, I notice that you're talking when I'm talking, and from my perspective, that goes against what you said you would do here. What could you do so that you're following the agreement? Or do we need to talk about this as an individual or as a class to say, okay, what's going on that you're talking when I'm talking? A lot of these conversations can be held independently with the child. If it's a big class issue, then we want to have a class meeting. But if it's an individual issue, then find time to talk to the student and say, what is going on that I notice so much that you're talking when I'm talking? If we assume you're being rude, you don't care about what I'm trying to say, you don't think I'm important, you don't respect me. If I assume all those negative things, I build an automatic wall that keeps me from really understanding what might be really going on for the child. It may be that they don't respect me and that they don't care about my subject. I don't know unless I ask. So having an opportunity to ask, what's going on for you here? I need to know more. And just really listen. And then we can problem solve around that. So I get it. You want to talk to your friends. It's the only class you have with that friend, and you value your time with them. And it's important that I be able to teach you and the other students. What opportunities can we create so that you can be with your friend in a positive way and still respect the needs of the class and the needs of the learning? So when we create individual agreements with kids, again, we bring in their contribution and create more buy-in with them. And we take that opportunity to build relationship by saying, I understand what you need. I understand what's going on for you. I need you to understand what's going on for me and the needs of the group. So I think when we're talking about teenagers, usually we're in junior and senior high, that can be kind of complicated to carve out some time to have an individual conversation with a kid, because usually teachers get them for 50 to 60 minutes at a time, and then they bring the next group in. So when am I supposed to talk to a kid? Sometimes there are times within the class period when we can have a whispered conversation, but often when I was in the classroom or even as a counselor, I would need to have a conversation with a kid. I would need to have that be before or after school or during lunch or whatever time it is that we agree on, so that we can have this conversation and spell it out. And then I used to, write out the agreement. You agree to do this. I agree to do that. I'll go make you a copy. Here's your copy. Here's my copy. And then if the behavior starts to show up again, almost all the time, all I needed to do was go get my copy of the agreement, put it in front of the child, and just quietly whisper, this is what we agreed to. Is there anything that would keep you from following that right now? Or do we need to talk about how to change the agreement? And almost every single time, they'd pull it back together again and follow the agreement. So I think kids have different priorities than we do. My priority is to make sure that kids learn the curriculum I'm supposed to teach. And it also needs to be that I'm connecting with those children so that they want to learn from me. So those individual conversations need to be about connection, empathy, understanding, and creating a relationship, so that when they're in the larger classroom environment with all the other kids, that relationship can be foundational to really inviting their cooperation and collaboration with you. So I think we need to be creative at the secondary level, because a lot of times in elementary school, because you have most times the kids all day long, there might be more times to carve out those individual conversations. So when we get creative about it, we can make it happen. And I think it can be really effective. So I don't know if that completely answers your question.
It does.
Went around the block there.
And I had addition, because you had me thinking, sometimes after school, we say, well, we want to speak to you today after school. Right. And they have other activities. They want to get out there and do something, or they have to let their parent know, and they feel like they're in trouble.
Right.
So having that sort of buffer to say, you know what, let's talk about it. We just want to connect. I really just want to meet with you. And when we come with that intention of, I just want to connect and we'll have a discussion because I know we're going to work this out. And say, we're going to need 10 minutes tomorrow. Is that okay with you? And that just invites that student to not go home and have to really angst over it, or have the parents then have a call to the teacher saying, hey, you know what? Right. My child was in trouble. No, we just wanted to have a conversation. So creating that peace with the parents too. Because sometimes from the beginning of the year when they come to those orientation nights saying, well, time to time, I'm going to ask your child to meet with me 10 minutes after school. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there is something terrible. Right. But I like to connect with my students and having that open conversation and creating the expectations or setting the guidelines with parents as well. If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, Yogi Patel, TTE.com.